And journalist and commentator Christian Calgie. Good to see you both again. Let's head straight into the Mail Shona, page 7, because they're focusing on this missing American pilot in Iran somewhere.
Yes, so this is Matthew Gould, who was an ambassador to Iran in the early noughties, and he has some experience of hostage situations.
This is the writer?
Yes, yeah. Sorry, who's written this for the Mail. So speculating about what might happen should this pilot be captured by Iran, what they would choose to do. He does hedge his bets somewhat, saying this could happen or that could happen, but he very vividly describes 22 years ago, members of the British military were blindfolded, marched into the desert and subjected to a mock execution and forced to read scripts apologising for their crime of entering Iranian waters. So he's talking about how any hostage might be treated and suggesting they would be kept alive and that the Iranians would potentially want to parade a hostage for as long as possible and use this for propaganda purposes, obviously to decrease any support in the US for the operation. And interestingly refers to if there would be any torture, it says, unlikely given the Iranian regime's preference for occupying the moral high ground, which is an extraordinary sort of phrase to think about. But talking about wanting to appear to be the wronged party in the conflict and using any hostage to promote that narrative. But also talks about how, on the ground, perhaps local commanders might not have got the memo about the moral high ground, and so really the situation is so unpredictable that anything is possible.
Yeah, it's quite an optimistic, weirdly to say, but it is an optimistic article insofar as it says, perhaps we can hopefully rule out that the person might be killed, but unfortunately they've devolved a lot of decisions to local IRGC commanders who may take a much more aggressive and uncompromising stance towards their prisoners.
Yes.
And I'm wary of saying this, given there's a Scot at the table, but clearly there are problems with devolution, and this is one of them. But hopefully, fingers crossed, it does say that the Iranian regime is not suicidal and ultimately it's pragmatic. So it's going to be a huge negotiating token. And this soldier, if he is captured, is going to go through hell, but hopefully he will not lose his life.
I'm not sure the decentralisation of power in Iran is comparable to Westminster and Holyrood, Christian, but we'll move on fairly quickly. Having said that, the decentralisation of power to the IRGC is one of their strengths, though, isn't it? Because it's not centralised, because they can work semi-autonomous. You're absolutely right. They may decide to do something else, and that's what makes this such a risk for the Americans, especially Shona, as they said. Donald Trump said they had air supremacy, they decimated their capability in Iran. Well, evidently not.
Yep. Exactly, saying they had no air defences, and then we're in this situation. I mean, obviously, this is all based on the theory that Iran captures the guy rather than the US manages to rescue him.
Because they've already rescued one of the pilots. There's 2 pilots in these F-15s,
but as time goes on, perhaps, I don't know, we'll need to see how it unfolds. But yes, speculation at this point about what might happen next.
Let's move on, Christian, to the front page of The Sun. Their headline is, "You can't make it up," and that really is the case. Can't being a pun on Sir Sadiq Khan's name, the Mayor of London, because what has been left on a London street? Well,
a bag full of guns has been left directly outside the Mayor's South London home by his security detail. 5 officers forgot the holdall and left it on a curbside, which was then found at 9:30 on Tuesday, at the same time as The Sun describes feral youths were running riot down the road in Clapham. There's a number of astonishing details. One of them that I can't get over is the fact that this very bulky, heavy bag directly outside the Mayor's home was discovered by a pregnant woman who kicked the bag. Which is not advisable. Call in bomb security, don't kick bags. And the partner then took it home. It was really heavy, and he found an MP5 semi-automatic Heckler and Koch carbine, a Glock pistol, taser, and ammunition. And he called the cops. So he was told he wouldn't get a reward, but a sarcastic police officer said, "We might give you a bag of sweets for it." But it's just a terrible failure of security. And yes, I think the time from it being left on the curb to the armed security realising and going back for it was minutes, 7 or 8 minutes. But, you know, and it was found during that time. And what an appalling blunder.
I mean, we shouldn't laugh, but it is an absolute farce. Like you say, culminating in someone saying, well, you might get a bag of sweets for doing your duty. They didn't have to call it in. It could have disappeared. And then, you know, that's more guns.
Yeah, it could. And as the person who found this and sold the story to The Sun points out, apparently there's a crack den around the corner.
Yeah.
And, you know, if the guns could have easily fallen into the wrong hands, so the Met should be thanking their lucky stars that it was found by someone, A, so quickly, and B, who, yes, sold it to The Sun and has embarrassed them, but handed it over.
I mean, let's be honest. In London, people live cheek by jowl with all sorts, whichever part of London they happen to be in. So,
crack house on every corner.
Well, no, I'm not necessarily. I wasn't going to say a crack house, but there's often trouble just around the corner. And that's just because of people being in close proximity to each other.
But I mean, 5 armed protection officers being temporarily suspended. I don't know how many they have in total, but that's a lot of people. Obviously, they'll quickly investigate who was in charge of the bag, but it's quite a big impact even in the short term.
Definitely.
But obviously rightly so.
Something else that strikes me as being quite farcical, Shona, is on the front page of The Eye. UK Strava leaks threat. Now, for those who aren't aware, Strava is an app that people use to track their exercise, whether it be running or cycling. It uses GPS, and you can see where you've run or cycled on a map afterwards. Well, it turns out the running app has revealed the location of 500 military staff at British bases, and this follows on from a French sailor who used Strava to track a run they were doing while they were on a boat sailing through the Mediterranean, which slightly gave the game away as to their location. Well, they're not alone.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, really, that really these military personnel are allowed to use Strava at all or have their data be made public. I mean, I'm sure this has been in the news in the last, certainly, year, where people were pointing out that you shouldn't be making your own home address visible to people, and you shouldn't show everyone that you go out for a run.
And you can limit that on the app
every day, so you can limit it. But obviously, if you're at Faslane, you know, even if you're doing a sort of 1 mile radius from where you start, it's still very useful information. But I didn't actually know how easy it was. I mean, the reporters from The Eye have said they could identify nuclear submariners and their families and their home addresses, and it just seems absolutely crazy that people are doing this at all. There's also people taking pictures of warships entering the port and somehow sharing that via their Strava account.
The other thing that you can do on Strava is people can flag certain sections where you can get the record. So, you know, it's a straight road of a mile, they'll call it a name, and someone will be the quickest along that route. It turns out the runners here have jokingly called one of those routes a security breach, which is pretty blatant.
Yeah, I saw that on the front page and I thought, oh, they're just jokingly referring to it amongst themselves. But no, it's actually on the app. Someone has dubbed it. And this is Diego Garcia.
Yeah.
You know, which has obviously been targeted by Iran. There's been a lot of stories in the news this week about Faslane, about submariners, about potential espionage. But if we're giving the data away, then it makes it very easy for people who want to do us harm to access it, just as anyone else could.
Yeah, it does seem a bit unwise. Let's turn our attention to preserves.
The most important.
Not a sentence I thought I was going to say today, but we're talking marmalade. In fact, the Daily Express, Christian, calls it marmalade madness because it turns out we're going to have to rebrand it as citrus marmalade. Now, call me old-fashioned. I thought marmalade was solely made from Seville oranges, whether shredded or shredless. But
well,
it seems I'm wrong.
Quite, and what an enormous blow for Paddington Bear this is. The reason I think this is important, and yes, people can disparage the significance of having to rebrand marmalade, but do you know, one of the pleasant things about being outside the EU over the last few years has been that we haven't had to deal with the constant bureaucratic meddling that Brussels absolutely loves. And
you sound like a fan.
No, I'm obviously a Brexiteer, but the serious point is that actually I think the EU is far too concerned with petty squabbling and branding and copyright and legal labelling nonsense rather than dealing with the security and prosperity of the people, because it's so much more easy to faff around with food labelling than it is to deal with energy security or economic growth. And my concern about us getting closer aligned to Brussels is that I think with our negotiating prowess with this government, we will get far more meddling from Brussels for nowhere near enough positive outcome by way of the economy. And this is just the tip of an iceberg that will grow and grow. And I can promise you, if we are dragged back into the EU, I will be writing bendy banana stories till the cows come home.
I was going to say, it does remind me of the curvature of a banana.
Quite right.
From years and years ago. I mean, look, there's the rules they make, and then it's just what people do in their day-to-day lives. And they'll just call it marmalade, won't they? They're going to say, I'm here for some citrus marmalade, as opposed to any other.
On a more serious note, I mean, is it petty to say that something that says chicken or bacon flavour should actually have meat in it? Because one of the things that might change is that, you know, a chicken and mushroom pot noodle can't be described as such if it doesn't actually contain chicken. And I would say that there's a lot of vegan products on the market just now which are very misleadingly advertised, like ice cream, which does not contain any cream. And I can't imagine that the kind of people who are kicking off about this are going to march to the defence of vegans. And I think that there are bigger issues here about what we're being sold. Our diets are all pretty poor. Our health is pretty poor. And I think it's really important that we know what we're eating, actually.
Good points, good points. Let's finish off with the Daily Mirror, Shona. Big's Bunny. This is... there's no other way to describe it. It's just a big rabbit.
Yes, that is a story. This rabbit is very big, is a story. Obviously, it's Easter weekend, but what I like about what they've done here is they've got a very big bunny and then a small bunny for scale, a Netherland dwarf, and it points out that the little one, Susie, has been spotted snuggling up on the sofa and dozing off between one of Junior's giant ears. Don't we all just want to be a tiny bunny having a snooze under the ear of its giant friend?
I just have to say, look at that cuddle. I mean, you know, and Junior, what an appropriate name. Shona Christian, thanks for the time being. You're watching Sky News. Back in a bit.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?